My wife said she had cancer. She's been faking chemotherapy to get attention. When someone you love receives a cancer diagnosis, your entire world stops. Everything else becomes secondary to supporting them through what could be the fight of their life. You reorganize your priorities, your finances, your emotions, and your daily routine around helping your loved one battle a disease that threatens everything you've built together. What I'm about to share with you is a story so disturbing and manipulative that it will make you question how well you really know the people closest to you. Hit that subscribe button right now because this story involves the most unforgivable lie possible. Taking a terminal illness to manipulate the people who love you most. Cancer diagnosis doesn't just affect the patient. It transforms the lives of everyone who loves them. Family members become caregivers, financial planners become medical advocates, and normal life gets put on hold while everyone rallies around supporting the person fighting for their life. It requires sacrifice, emotional strength, and often significant financial resources as families navigate treatment options, insurance battles, and the uncertainty of an unpredictable disease. But what happens when that cancer diagnosis is completely fabricated? What happens when your spouse has been lying about having a terminal illness while watching you sacrifice your emotional and financial well-being to support a battle that never existed? My name is David, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed my wife Angela was courageously fighting stage 3 breast cancer that had been diagnosed 8 months earlier. I thought her weekly chemotherapy treatments, her physical weakness, her hair loss, and her emotional struggles were the result of aggressive medical treatment that was hopefully saving her life. I had no idea that when Angela told me she had cancer and needed my support through chemotherapy, she was orchestrating the most elaborate and cruel deception I could imagine, faking a terminal illness to receive attention, sympathy, and financial support while watching me destroy my own health and finances trying to help her through a medical crisis that didn't exist. I'm 38 years old, an insurance adjuster from Denver, Colorado, and I've been married to Angela for 6 years. We don't have children yet, but we'd been planning to start a family once we felt more financially secure and Angela advanced in her career as a graphic designer. Angela had always been somewhat dramatic and enjoyed being the center of attention, but I attributed this to her creative personality and her natural charisma that drew people to her. 8 months ago, Angela came home from what I thought was a routine doctor's appointment with news that changed everything I thought I knew about our future together. "David," she said, sitting down next to me on our couch with tears streaming down her face, "the doctor found something during my examination. I have breast cancer." The words hit me like a physical blow. Angela was only 34 years old, had no family history of breast cancer, and had always seemed healthy and energetic. The diagnosis felt impossible and terrifying. "What stage?" I asked, trying to process the magnitude of what she was telling me. "What are the treatment options? What do we need to do?" Angela explained that her oncologist had diagnosed her with stage 3 breast cancer that had spread to her lymph nodes but hadn't yet metastasized to other organs. The prognosis was serious but treatable with aggressive chemotherapy followed by potential surgery and radiation. "Dr. Peterson says that with intensive treatment, I have a good chance of beating this," Angela said through her tears. "But it's going to be a long, difficult process that will require chemotherapy every week for at least 6 months. I immediately assured Angela that we would face this challenge together and that I would do everything possible to support her through treatment and recovery. "We're going to fight this together," I told her, holding her as she cried. "Whatever you need, medical care, emotional support, financial resources, will make it work. You're going to beat this." Angela seemed comforted by my commitment to supporting her through her cancer treatment, and we began the overwhelming process of researching treatment options, understanding our insurance coverage, and preparing for the physical and emotional challenges ahead. Over the following weeks, Angela provided detailed information about her treatment plan, including the specific chemotherapy drugs she would receive, the schedule of treatments, and the side effects she was likely to experience. "Dr. Peterson wants to start with a combination of adriamycin and cyclophosphamide," Angela explained, showing me printed materials about her treatment protocol. "I'll have treatments every Tuesday for 16 weeks, and we'll evaluate whether I need additional drugs or surgical intervention." Angela's knowledge of her treatment plan seemed comprehensive and medically accurate, which reassured me that she was receiving excellent care from qualified oncologists. When Angela began her chemotherapy treatments, I arranged to adjust my work schedule so I could drive her to appointments and provide support during what I knew would be physically and emotionally difficult sessions. "I want to be there for every treatment," I told Angela. "You shouldn't have to go through this alone." However, Angela insisted that she preferred to attend her chemotherapy sessions independently, claiming that having me there would make the experience more emotional and stressful for her. "I think I'll handle the treatments better if I can focus on staying calm and positive," Angela said. "Having you there might make me more anxious and emotional, which could make the side effects worse." Angela's preference for attending treatments alone seemed psychologically reasonable, since many cancer patients prefer to maintain some sense of independence and control during their medical care. I respected Angela's wishes about attending treatments independently, but I made sure to provide extensive support in other ways. I took over all household responsibilities, prepared special meals to help with treatment-related nausea, managed our finances to accommodate increased medical expenses, and provided emotional support during her difficult days. Angela's response to chemotherapy followed the patterns I expected based on my research about cancer treatment. She experienced significant fatigue, nausea, and appetite loss that seemed consistent with the aggressive chemotherapy regimen she had described. "I feel so weak all the time," Angela would tell me after her Tuesday treatments. "The nausea is horrible, and I can barely keep food down for the first few days after each session." I was heartbroken to see Angela suffering from the side effects of treatment, but I was encouraged that she was tolerating the chemotherapy well enough to continue with her treatment schedule. About 3 months into Angela's treatment, she began losing her hair, which was one of the most emotionally difficult aspects of her cancer journey for both of us. "I knew this would happen," Angela said as she showed me clumps of hair that had fallen out during her shower, "but actually experiencing it is so much harder than I expected." I helped Angela research wigs and headscarves, and I constantly reassured her that her physical appearance didn't change how beautiful she was to me or how committed I was to supporting her through treatment. "Your hair will grow back," I told her regularly. "What matters is getting you healthy. Everything else is temporary." Angela seemed to appreciate my support during this physically and emotionally challenging period, and she often told me how grateful she was to have a husband who was willing to sacrifice so much to help her fight cancer. The first thing that made me suspicious about Angela's cancer treatment came about 4 months into her supposed chemotherapy regimen when I noticed that her treatment schedule seemed inconsistent with what she had initially described. Angela had originally told me that she would have chemotherapy every Tuesday for 16 weeks, but I began noticing that some weeks she would claim to have treatments on different days or would occasionally skip weeks entirely. "I thought you were supposed to have treatment today," I would say when Angela didn't leave for her Tuesday appointment. "Dr. Peterson moved my appointment to Thursday this week," Angela might reply, or "My blood work showed that I need an extra week to recover before the next treatment." Angela's explanation seemed medically plausible, since chemotherapy schedules can be adjusted based on patient response and blood test results. The frequency of schedule changes seemed unusual. The second red flag came when I offered to contact Angela's oncologist directly to better understand her treatment plan and prognosis, and Angela became defensive about maintaining privacy around her medical care. "I'd like to talk to Dr. Peterson myself so I can understand what we should expect during the rest of your treatment," I told Angela. "I want to be as supportive as possible, and I think it would help me if I could ask questions about your care." Angela seemed uncomfortable with my suggestion and insisted that patient privacy laws would prevent Dr. Peterson from discussing her case with me. "The doctor can't talk to you about my treatment without special paperwork," Angela said, "and honestly, I prefer to keep my medical information private. I don't want you to worry about details that might be confusing or scary." Angela's reluctance to include me in her medical care seemed unusual for someone dealing with a serious illness who had been accepting extensive support from me. The third red flag came when I noticed that Angela's physical appearance and energy levels didn't seem consistent with someone undergoing intensive chemotherapy treatment. While Angela did show some signs of illness, fatigue, occasional nausea, and hair loss, her overall physical condition seemed better than I expected for someone receiving aggressive cancer treatment. Angela was still able to maintain social activities, work part-time on freelance projects, and engage in physical activities that seemed inconsistent with the severe immunosuppression and physical weakness typically associated with chemotherapy. "I'm feeling pretty good today," Angela would say on days when I expected her to be experiencing severe treatment side effects. "I think I'm tolerating the chemotherapy better than Dr. Peterson expected." While some cancer patients do tolerate treatment better than others, Angela's relatively good physical condition seemed inconsistent with the intensive treatment regimen she had described. The situation reached a breaking point 2 weeks ago when I decided to surprise Angela by bringing flowers to her chemotherapy appointment, despite her preferences for attending treatments alone. I wanted to show Angela that I was thinking about her during what I knew was a difficult and frightening medical procedure, and I thought seeing me unexpectedly might provide emotional comfort during treatment. I drove to the cancer center where Angela claimed to receive her chemotherapy treatments and asked the reception staff to deliver flowers to Angela Martinez, who should have been receiving treatment that afternoon. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said after checking their appointment system, "but we don't have any patient named Angela Martinez scheduled for treatment today, and I don't see her name in our patient database." I was confused and concerned. If Angela wasn't receiving treatment at this cancer center, where was she going for her chemotherapy appointments? I asked the receptionist to check under Angela's maiden name and to verify whether she might be registered under different personal information, but there was no record of Angela ever being a patient at the facility. Sir, the receptionist said, I've checked our entire patient database, and we have never had a patient named Angela Martinez or Angela Thompson. Are you sure this is the correct treatment center? I left the cancer center feeling confused and frightened. If Angela wasn't receiving chemotherapy treatments where she claimed to be getting medical care, where had she been going every Tuesday for the past 8 months? That evening, I confronted Angela about what I had discovered at the cancer center and demanded an explanation for why there was no record of her being a patient there. Angela, I said when she returned home from her supposed treatment appointment, I went to the cancer center today to bring you flowers, and they told me you've never been a patient there. Where have you been going for chemotherapy treatments? Angela's face went completely white, and she looked panicked and trapped when she realized that her deception had been discovered. There must be some mistake, she stammered. Maybe they were looking in the wrong system, or maybe there's a privacy issue with their records. But Angela's panicked reaction made it clear that there was no administrative mistake or privacy issue. She had been lying about receiving cancer treatment. Angela, I said, the receptionist checked their entire patient database and confirmed that you have never been a patient at that facility. Where have you really been going every Tuesday? Angela broke down crying and admitted that she had been lying about having cancer and receiving chemotherapy treatments. David, I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I don't have cancer. I've been lying about everything, the diagnosis, the treatments, the side effects. None of it was real. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. For 8 months, Angela had been fabricating a terminal illness while watching me sacrifice my emotional health, my financial resources, and my daily life to support her through a medical crisis that didn't exist. You've been lying about having cancer for 8 months? I asked, barely able to process the magnitude of her deception. You've been watching me worry about losing you, reorganize my entire life around supporting you through treatment, and spend thousands of dollars on medical expenses, and none of it was real? Angela admitted that she had never been diagnosed with cancer and had never seen an oncologist or received any cancer treatment. I made up the diagnosis because I was feeling neglected and wanted more attention and support from you, Angela confessed through her tears. I thought that if you believed I was seriously ill, you would prioritize our relationship and show me how much you cared about me. Angela's explanation revealed a level of manipulation and cruelty that I had never imagined she was capable of. Angela, I said, trying to understand the scope of her deception, you've been faking chemotherapy treatments for 8 months. You've been making yourself sick, losing your hair, and acting weak and nauseous. How did you fake all the physical symptoms of cancer treatment? Angela admitted that she had been deliberately making herself ill to simulate the side effects of chemotherapy, including taking medications that caused nausea and fatigue, and even pulling out her own hair to simulate chemotherapy-related hair loss. I researched the side effects of cancer treatment online and figured out ways to make myself experience similar symptoms, Angela said. I would take anti-nausea medication in reverse to make myself feel sick, and I gradually pulled out sections of my hair to make it look like I was losing it from chemotherapy. Angela had been systematically harming herself physically to maintain her fake cancer diagnosis while watching me suffer emotionally and financially trying to support her through a fabricated medical crisis. If you're feeling as horrified and betrayed as I was when I learned that Angela had been faking cancer for 8 months, you need to hit that subscribe button right now because the story gets even more disturbing when I discovered what she had been doing with the money I gave her for medical expenses. What I found out about her real activities during those supposed chemotherapy appointments will make you realize that some people are capable of deception so cruel and calculated that they deserve to face serious consequences. Ring that notification bell because you won't believe how this medical fraud affected our entire community and what happened when everyone learned the truth. Over the next several days, Angela revealed additional details about her fake cancer deception that made the situation even more horrifying and unforgivable. Angela admitted that she had been using the time she claimed to be receiving chemotherapy treatments to engage in activities that were completely inconsistent with cancer treatment, including shopping, meeting with friends, and even dating other men. Where were you really going on Tuesdays when you said you were getting chemotherapy? I demanded to know. Sometimes I would go shopping or go to movies, Angela confessed. Other times I would meet with friends for lunch or coffee. I needed time to myself, and the chemotherapy story gave me an excuse to have several hours away from home every week. Angela had been using her fake cancer diagnosis as an excuse to have free time for recreational activities while I believed she was undergoing life-saving medical treatment. Even more disturbing, Angela admitted that she had been meeting with men she had connected with through dating apps, using her fake cancer story to generate sympathy and attract partners who wanted to support her through her supposed medical crisis. I met several men who were interested interested in helping me through cancer treatment, Angela said when I pressed for details about her Tuesday activities. They would take me to lunch or dinner and offer emotional support because they thought I was dealing with a terminal illness. Angela had been using her fabricated cancer diagnosis to manipulate not just me, but also strangers who were genuinely concerned about helping someone facing a medical emergency. Investigation into Angela's deception also revealed that she had been stealing money that I had given her for medical expenses and using it for personal entertainment and gifts for the men she had been dating. I gave you thousands of dollars for co-pays, medications, and treatment-related expenses, I said when reviewing our financial records. What did you do with that money? Angela admitted that she had spent the money I gave her for medical expenses on clothes, jewelry, restaurant meals, and gifts for her dating partners who believed they were helping her through cancer treatment. I used the medical expense money for things that made me feel better about myself, Angela said. I bought clothes that made me feel attractive, and I would pay for dinners with men who were being supportive during my supposed treatment. Angela had been stealing money intended to save her life and using it to fund recreational activities and relationships with men she was deceiving about her medical condition. The most devastating discovery was that Angela had been accepting sympathy, financial support, and practical help from our friends, family members, and community based on her fabricated cancer diagnosis. Angela's parents had been sending money to help with medical expenses. My parents had been providing emotional support and practical assistance. Friends had organized meal trains, fundraising events, and support groups to help Angela through her supposed cancer battle. How many people have you been lying to about having cancer? I asked Angela when I realized the scope of her deception. Everyone, Angela admitted. My family, your family, our friends, people at work. I told everyone about the cancer diagnosis because I wanted people to care about me and support me. Angela had been exploiting the natural compassion and generosity of dozens of people who had genuinely wanted to help someone facing a life-threatening illness. I contacted several of the people who had been supporting Angela through her fake cancer battle and had the heartbreaking responsibility of telling them that they had been deceived and that their kindness had been exploited. Angela has been lying about having cancer. I had to explain to her parents, my parents, and our close friends. There was no diagnosis, no treatment, and no medical crisis. She fabricated everything to get attention and support. The reactions of family and friends ranged from shock and disbelief to anger and disgust when they learned that Angela had been manipulating their emotions and exploiting their desire to help someone in medical crisis. I can't believe she would lie about something like cancer, Angela's own mother said when I told her the truth. I've been worried sick about losing my daughter, and I've been sending money that we couldn't afford to help with her medical bills. Angela's deception had caused emotional trauma and financial hardship for people who loved her and had been genuinely trying to support her through what they believed was a life-threatening illness. I also discovered that Angela had been accepting support from cancer support groups and charitable organizations that provide resources for people dealing with serious illness. Angela has been attending cancer support groups and accepting help from charities that assist cancer patients. I learned when I contacted some of the organizations that had been helping her. She's been taking resources that were intended for people who actually have cancer. Angela had been stealing support and resources from people who were genuinely fighting cancer while pretending to share their struggle. When I confronted Angela about the full scope of her deception and the harm she had caused to so many people, she initially tried to claim that her fake cancer diagnosis was the result of psychological problems that deserved sympathy rather than consequences. I was struggling with depression and anxiety, Angela claimed. I didn't know how to ask for the attention and support I needed, so I created a medical crisis that would make people care about me. But Angela's explanation ignored the calculated nature of her deception and the extensive planning required to maintain her lies for 8 months. Angela, I said, you didn't have a moment of weakness or make a desperate mistake. You spent 8 months systematically deceiving dozens of people, stealing money, and exploiting resources intended for people with actual cancer. That's not depression, that's fraud. Angela's fake cancer diagnosis had involved extensive research about cancer treatment, deliberate self-harm to simulate treatment side effects, theft of money intended for medical expenses, and exploitation of charitable resources designed to help genuinely ill people. I told Angela that our marriage was over and that she needed to move out of our house immediately while I decided whether to pursue legal action for the fraud she had committed. Angela initially tried to convince me that we could work through her deception with therapy and that she was ready to be honest about her psychological issues. I realize now that what I did was wrong, Angela said, but I was struggling with mental health problems that made me make bad decisions. We can get counseling and work through this together. But Angela's fake cancer diagnosis wasn't a symptom of mental health issues. It was deliberate fraud that had caused extensive emotional and financial harm to multiple people. Angela Angela, I said, you spent 8 months lying to me about having a terminal illness while watching me sacrifice my health and finances to support you through a crisis that didn't exist. You stole money, exploited charitable resources, and traumatized people who loved you. That level of deception and manipulation can't be fixed with therapy. I consulted with a lawyer about pursuing criminal charges against Angela for fraud, theft, and exploitation of charitable resources, as well as civil action to recover the money she had stolen. What your wife did constitutes multiple forms of fraud and theft, the lawyer explained. She could face criminal charges for stealing money under false pretenses and for exploiting charitable organizations. The lawyer also explained that Angela's deception could be prosecuted as medical fraud, since she had been claiming to receive treatment that didn't exist and had been stealing resources intended for people with genuine medical needs. I filed for divorce immediately and provided law enforcement with documentation of Angela's fraud, including financial records showing her theft of medical expense money and evidence of her deception of charitable organizations. Angela was ultimately charged with fraud and theft, and she was required to pay restitution to the individuals and organizations she had deceived. Angela was also banned from participating in cancer support groups and charitable organizations that assist people with serious illnesses. The legal consequences of Angela's fake cancer diagnosis included criminal charges, financial restitution, and a permanent record that would affect her ability to access legitimate medical and social services in the future. Angela's relationships with her family and friends were permanently destroyed when they learned about her deception and the extent to which she had exploited their love and generosity. I never want to see Angela again, her own sister told me after learning about the fake cancer diagnosis. What she did is unforgivable, and I can't trust anything she says ever again. The community support network that had rallied around Angela during her supposed cancer battle was devastated to learn that their compassion and resources had been exploited by someone who was perfectly healthy. 3 weeks later, I'm still processing the magnitude of Angela's deception and the impact it has had on everyone who was touched by her lies. The 8 months I spent believing that my wife was fighting for her life were the most stressful and emotionally difficult period of my adult life, and learning that it was all fabricated has left me questioning my ability to trust anyone completely. I've had to rebuild relationships with family and friends who were also victims of Angela's deception, and we've all had to process the trauma of being manipulated by someone we loved and trusted. I've learned painful lessons about the importance of verifying medical information and maintaining direct contact with healthcare providers and supporting someone through serious illness. I now understand that some people are capable of exploiting the most fundamental human emotions, love, compassion, and the desire to help someone in crisis for their own selfish purposes. Angela's fake cancer diagnosis taught me that there are forms of betrayal so cruel and calculated that they destroy not just trust, but also your faith in human nature and your ability to believe in the authenticity of other people's struggles. Sometimes people ask me if I blame myself for not recognizing signs that Angela's cancer diagnosis was fabricated, or if I should have been more suspicious of her medical claims. While I could have been more vigilant about verifying medical information, Angela is ultimately responsible for choosing to fabricate a terminal illness and exploit the love and compassion of everyone around her. Angela made deliberate decisions to lie about having cancer, to steal money intended for medical treatment, to exploit charitable resources, and to cause emotional trauma to dozens of people who genuinely cared about her well-being. The level of planning and deception required to maintain Angela's fake cancer diagnosis for 8 months shows that this wasn't a temporary mistake or the result of mental health crisis. It was systematic fraud designed to manipulate and exploit people's natural desire to help someone in medical crisis. I trusted Angela's medical claims because that's what loving relationships require: faith that your partner will be honest about fundamental aspects of their health and well-being. Angela's betrayal was so extreme and cruel that it has changed my understanding of what people are capable of when they prioritize their own needs over the well-being of everyone around them. However, discovering Angela's deception ultimately saved me from wasting more years in a relationship with someone who was fundamentally dishonest and manipulative. The pain of learning about Angela's fake cancer diagnosis was devastating, but it also freed me from a marriage with someone who was willing to exploit terminal illness for attention and personal gain. I'm now building relationships with people who understand that honesty about health and medical issues is essential for trust and authentic connection. Angela's fake cancer deception taught me the difference between supporting someone through genuine crisis and being manipulated by someone who is willing to exploit your compassion for their own benefit. I now have the knowledge and experience to recognize authentic medical needs and to avoid relationships with people who are capable of using serious illness as a tool for manipulation and control. The 8 months I spent believing Angela was fighting cancer were horrible, but they also taught me about my own capacity for love, sacrifice, and support during genuine crisis, qualities that I can now direct toward people who deserve and will value authentic care and compassion.